important that we take responsibility, no joking around about it, to speak out for justice, goodness, decency. There is a strong instinct not to do it, because after all, you don't want to look out your window and see a lot of people pointing up at you. If you're silent, maybe bad people and mean people will overlook you. I urge you, don't be a silent person when it comes to issues of justice, morality, decency, human rights. I urge you, take inspiration from Martin Luther King, John Lewis, Hosea Williams, Fred Gray, Viola Liuzzo, Rosa Parks, Jack Greenberg. And when you encounter these sorts of issues, as inevitably you will, call it out loud. Call it out loud. I urge you, bend your arm to the moral end of the universe. Let me show you one last picture here. You know, I showed those pictures earlier of those Ku Klux Klan kids, the purpose of which was to symbolize that there are values at stake here. Often, usually, they come from parents. And this last picture is quite like those, except backwards. And it's why I'm hopeful that justice is the strongest force of all. So it's like those, but backwards. Get this. Am I not a good-looking child? You can't deny that. I mean, it's really remarkable as a matter of fact. And it's because I learned this stuff from my dad. And I love him. And I respect him deeply. And that I was inspired to write this book so I could, I hoped, make a difference, share the message with others so they too could make a difference. I'll show you two individuals who inspire my writing. That's my dog, in case you didn't know. And my wife, Susan. Hi. See you tomorrow night. Does anybody have any questions you'd like to ask me? Questions at all? I urge you to speak up. Questions? Yep.
I want to know how your mother reacted to all this. Your mother reacted as your father goes on.
Very upset. All the time. I think I had no comprehension at all, maybe less than zero, as a kid. Why is Mom so upset? You know, take a chill pill. But she was scared her husband would be killed. And she was anxious all the time. And it was a lot of strain on their marriage. Yeah, it was very tough. It took me till I was in my mid-40s to kind of have a grasp of that. Other questions at all? Yes?
How many fictional liberties do you take in your book?
How many fictional liberties? Very few. I made what you might call an artistic choice. All I've written before is poetry. And I wanted to attempt this. I could have done this as nonfiction, but there were so many story strands. I'm a white kid growing up in the city and in a suburb. There's King's story, there's my father's story. And in order to convey the voting rights crisis, I felt as though I needed some characters whom I didn't know and didn't know where to research them. So I thought I could create those characters and have them convey the truth of the situation, though they were created. So I would say roughly it's really 95% or more just sheer history, but I've cobbled it together with little linkages, ligaments of fiction, because this was my vision for the book. I can't say for sure it worked. I've been told by librarians that it's a category of book that's becoming more popular nowadays for authors. I didn't base it on any other book. It was the only way I knew to solve the problem of how to tell all these different stories. Other questions? Yes?
I was just curious if like some things your dad might have told you about Martin King Jr. since you got to be around him a lot, just kind of like impressions about his character? Or...
My father thought the world of Martin Luther King. Well, first of all, he knew all those guys. Like Thurgood Marshall would come to our house and shoot hoops. He had a nickname for me. Thurgood Marshall called me Knucklehead. Martin Luther King, he said, was courageous. First of all, was courageous. And boy, did he have a lot to be frightened of. Not only was the Ku Klux Klan gunning for him, but the federal government in great measure, the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, really disliked him. Saw him as a communist. Everybody was a communist. He saw King as a brilliant thinker, an eloquent speaker, and a great strategist. Not a perfect man. Not a perfect man, but I've met few of those. Certainly a great man. And I think my father would absolutely say that. Other questions at all right now? Yeah.
I'm curious how you decided on the title of your book.
A Tugging String, because at one point in the book I have my father reflecting on what is motivating him to do these things that put his life in jeopardy. And it's almost like a tugging string. All these parts of his personal history are tugging at him and moving him in the direction that he goes. And I'll finish perhaps by telling you how I met Dr. King. Now, I'm a kid, a white kid from the north, and King has a southern accent. He's from the south. And my father's name is Jack Greenberg, and I'm in my father's office in New York City. And I'm doing one of my favorite things of all, reading a comic book. And so I'm reading a comic book, and my father walks in and says, "I'd like you to meet someone very important." And I said, "No, I'm reading a comic book." He said, "It's Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, don't embarrass me in front of him." Oh. So there he was, and I was very thrilled and frightened, and I went to shake his hand, and he said something to me that baffled me. Now, this is my best rendition of the southern accent. He said, "Well, you're Jackson." I said, "No, sir, I'm David." He said, "You're Jackson." I said, "You can call me Jackson, that's all right, but I'm David." Does anybody know what he was saying to me? You're Jack's son. But he pushed his words together, because that's kind of the accent there. It took me a year to figure that out. And wasn't Jackson like a Civil War general? I mean, what's this all about? And I suspect I speak to an audience that fully comprehends. Each of us has a vital responsibility to bend our arm to the moral end of the universe. Let's always bear that in mind through all our lives. That's all. Thank you very much, everybody.
We're on again at 7 tonight if you want to come talk about publishing.